G'day and welcome back to SSW TV. I'm Adam Stevenson and I'm very pleased today to be talking to Peter Gfader. Peter's an authority on clean code, testing and continuous improvement. Peter, thanks for joining us.
Hi Adam, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Now, tell us a bit about yourself and what you're passionate about at the moment.
I work with a lot of different software companies, different teams here in Switzerland since 1.5 years. And I am very passionate about this practice or this mindset of continuous delivery. To achieve continuous delivery, you really need to focus on quality, making sure that your software is always releasable, and that's where clean code comes into this game.
Excellent.
I do other things, like I write articles about that topic, I give talks at different conferences, I do trainings for professional Scrum developer. That's a training that I do with scrum.org, and yeah, lots of different things at the end. Yeah.
Excellent. So, how did you become attracted to clean code?
It was funny because I go to companies and they normally say something like, hey, we want to be more agile. And then I ask them, hey, what do you mean by being more agile? What is agile for you? And then they realize, hey, we probably have other problems that the process or the Scrum is not working for us and stuff like that. So I have a long discussion with them on how they make money, what's their business model, how often they release new software and things like that. And then as part of this, we come into the discussion about how often they release new software or how often they release new features or ideas to their end users. And then we realize, hey, it takes 6 months or maybe a year until they get new software out. And then I say, hey, what would happen if you do that every month or every week, releasing new software? How hard would that be? So this is where the idea of continuous delivery comes in. And then I realized, hey, that's actually quite hard to release new software every week. So one idea here is to focus on quality. So you really need to make sure that you have a good quality in your software to be able to do that, so releasing once a week. Then I looked around and then I found different things there, like the software craftsmanship movement and other practices from the extreme programming idea. And one of this was clean code. And so I came to this idea of clean code, yeah, and the books there.
And so why should people really care about clean code?
I think our industry has a big problem. Our industry has the problem that we are not really delighting our customers. We are just pushing out new software, but not really making sure that we deliver what the end user wants. And in order to release more often and release more frequently, we need to focus about quality. I said that already. But in order to do so, you really need to focus on quality. And to focus on quality, you need clean code as a developer or development team. So good quality and clean code means focusing on all these practices and principles that you have in the clean code program and making sure that you have quality built in your software. That is actually quite interesting because the Agile Manifesto guys, these 11 guys that wrote the Agile Manifesto in the year 2001, they came back together 10 years afterwards. So that was 2011, and they did a retrospective. So they thought about, hey, what changed since the last time? And then they figured out one of the first key things that they wanted to change or they wanted to improve in the next years was, they said, something like demand technical excellence. And one part of technical excellence is actually clean code, making sure that your craft is of high quality. So that's why everyone should care about clean code, or at least every software company, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. But what about value for money? You know, like business owners often push back on these kind of practices because there's a perception that they cost more. How do you go about explaining long-term cost benefits to the business?
That's interesting because if you tell a business owner or a manager or product owner about how you work, and you say something like the product owner comes to you and says, hey, how long does it take you to implement that feature? And then you say, it takes me 2 days. But then I need to test it, I need to make it deployable, I need to write some unit tests around it, it takes me 5 days. And then the business owner probably says, hey, are you crazy? You need 3 days just to test that thing and make sure it works and deploy it? So just skip that, and we are back at the 2 days. And that's actually the discussion that you don't want to have. You could that's something you would say, hey, me as a as a developer, I really need to care about quality. I need to care about clean code. I need to care about my professional behavior and make sure it works. And in order to do so, I need to test it. I make sure it is releasable. I make sure that it is passing all the acceptance tests and so on. And the value for money that you get then is, maybe in the short term you think, hey, this is actually causing a lot of overhead and it costs me more. But in the long term you realize, hey, it lets us go faster. So for example, if you're doing 1 week sprints, so you realize, hey, in 1 week we can hack together a lot of things because we just shove that in, take this other bit around and hack something together, and probably after a couple of weeks you have a big ball of mud. And it's very hard to maintain, very hard to change, very hard to add new features. So it's really a long-term investment. An interesting term that Ward Cunningham coined there was this idea of technical debt. And this is probably a good way to explain the business about quality and making sure that you build quality in the software. So the value for money is, you probably don't see the value for money immediately, but from a long-term way of looking at it, you realize that there is a lot of value for money in it.
So do you include practices like dependency injection and other patterns that might be, that help you have maintainable solutions? Do you count those as being part of clean code, or do you see that as being outside of clean code?
No, sure. I think the dependency inversion principle, that's one of the 5 solid principles. Yep. And that's definitely one part of making sure that your code becomes cleaner, definitely. Okay. If you're doing that practice, that's actually making sure you're separating your responsibilities. You're not creating the dependencies inside your original class or method that is using the dependency, but you're passing dependencies in from the outside world. So it's actually one way of separating responsibilities. Yeah. And the separation of responsibilities is actually one of the principles of the clean code program.
Yeah. So sometimes it's important for businesses to understand that these practices will save them money in the long run as their solutions become more maintainable. But they can also leverage these, the clean code practices like testing to actually make their developers more productive up front. So, a developer who can write a unit test to test that code works is going to be more productive than one that has to hit F5 and step through, multiple screens of an application to be able to test the code that he's interested in.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess it's really about getting all those points across.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
So what steps can I take to become a clean code developer?
First of all, you need to be aware that it's not happening in overnight. So it's not that you get the clean code pill, you eat it, and then you're suddenly a clean code developer. It's more a process, and it's happening over a long time. And probably you're never really a clean code master. So I think of it more like a journey. So what I focus on is sharing code with others, doing code reviews, maybe participate in open source projects, do a lot of pair programming because I learn from others. Then I try to learn new languages, learn new frameworks, learn new tools, and basically it's a journey. It's not that I learn all the principles from the clean code program, and I learn all the practices from the clean code program, and suddenly I'm a clean code developer. It's more like a mindset, like I accept that I'm not perfect, and I try to improve my whole life.
So a lot of those things are very collaborative. So it's very much learning from other people as you go along, and sharing what you know, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So what I try to do is I try to find others that have a similar mindset. Here in Switzerland, there are a lot of user groups, like in Australia as well, and I enjoyed the time over there as well. But basically, there are a lot of user groups where people or geeks get together and they hack on something, they exchange new things that they learned, and yeah. Blogging is just another way of sharing things. So you put something out, you get feedback, you learn something. Yeah, it's just another way.
You get some better ideas.
Yeah, exactly. Tweeting, blogging, just pushing out your stuff that you're doing and getting feedback. That's a great way of learning things.
Yeah.
What I enjoy a lot is pair programming, especially with better developers, but also with junior developers, so developers that are not so experienced. It's always interesting the way they think, the way they approach a problem, and you learn a lot out of that as well. So it's not just you learn from a master or better developer, you learn also from a developer that is not so experienced or new to the craft.
Excellent. And so do you think that to start with, as a developer looking to write more readable code, I should be focusing on things like the single responsibility principle, and maybe just trying to write smaller classes and smaller methods, and maybe just make an effort to really focus on my naming and just make my code, each class of code more readable? Is that a good place to start with?
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, I think you got it perfect there. I think a good starting point would be naming. So making sure that my classes have a nice name, methods have a nice name, variables have a nice name. But the interesting question here is, how should you know if they have a nice name? So normally I start with giving them X, Y, foo, bar, and so on. And then if I sit together with someone else and we are pairing or working together, then I actually realize, hey, this variable doesn't make sense. I should probably rename it to temp customers or something like that. So the idea of pairing is very important there. And a good starting point is definitely naming. So making sure you have nice names, and then you start to focus on single responsibility. So making things smaller. What I did in the past was, for sure, I violated the rule a lot. So I had huge classes, I had huge methods, I had long parameter names, I had long parameter lists, and once you start getting into that idea of splitting up methods and making everything small, you see different patterns there, and that helps you to improve your code even more. So naming and single responsibility is a great starting point.
Okay.
What is interesting then as well is to make sure it is simple enough. So keep it simple, stupid. That's another principle, the KISS principle. So not trying to making sure it is beautiful, but just get it done, make it work, and make it readable. Yep. And the other one is you ain't gonna need it. But naming and single responsibility is definitely a good starting point.
So it's an interesting the keep it simple is there's kind of a balance there between making something clean and then keeping it simple, isn't it? Like, you don't want to refactor it 100 times to make it perfect, but you want to refactor it enough so that it is clean and it is simple and it is readable. So I guess that's something that comes with experience.
That's a good question, because the question should be, when do you stop? When do you stop refactoring? Because you could refactor your code for a couple of weeks without any actually implementing new features. So I think you need to find a balance there between pushing new features out and making sure that the code is readable enough and good enough. So find a balance there. So refactoring is important, making sure it is readable is important, making sure that it works is important, but on the other hand, pushing new features out is important as well. So a good balance is important, yeah.
Definitely. So you've named a few techniques that you like. Are there any others that you think people should know about?
Um, Definitely the solid principles. They are very interesting. I think just Google for them. You can find them on the web. They are explained quite nicely with code examples. You can find examples on my blog as well. What I
We've already
think,
done two, I guess.
sorry?
Well, we've already covered two pretty loosely.
Oh,
So
yeah.
dependency inversion and single responsibility.
Exactly. What I enjoyed as well is the root cause analysis principle. So in there, you
Okay.
try to focus not just fixing the symptom quickly, but you really try to dig into the root cause of the problem. So a quick example there would be if you're on a boat trip and you have heaps of water in your boat, you don't start to actually push out the water of your boat, but you normally focus on fixing the problem first. So you try to fix the hole in the boat instead of just pushing out the water. That's one example of the root cause analysis. And we developers don't tend to do that. We try to fix the symptom without actually making sure that we're fixing the root cause, which is sometimes a bit deeper in the code, hidden somewhere.
I've been
Um,
given a task, I'll finish the task rather than looking at why I have the task on my list. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. And that's the reason why you need more time if you want to be a clean code developer, because you're doing this root cause analysis, you're doing these refactorings, you're writing a test, you're renaming stuff. This all takes time, and that's something, if you ask a developer, he will always say, no, I don't have time. And
Yep.
a good developer, he will always say, okay, I need my time to make it proper and to focus on quality. Another thing that I really enjoy is the Boy Scout rule and refactorings and testings. So that what I mean by that is the Boy Scout rule basically says that we are always trying to improve our code, always a little bit. I could do a little refactoring, I could do a little renaming, I could write a little test, I could add a new unit test, acceptance test, and so on. So I'm definitely always, when I open up a new file, I'm trying to improve it somehow. Important though is don't play the ping pong game. Like I'm changing something to a new variable name, then Adam Stevenson comes along and changes again, checks it in, and the next morning I come along and say, that's not how I would like to write it, and I change it again. So try to avoid the ping pong games. But one good practice there is definitely code reviews and pair programming and all this stuff. So you settle
Yes.
down on one standard and go along there.
And once again, it's coming back to being collaborative.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So that's all of this stuff's building quality into our software, so that so that our software is maintainable for over a long period of time. Um, we're focusing on writing quality software, but what do you actually believe quality is?
Hmm. That's an interesting question, because I ask exactly the same question a lot of my friends, a lot of people that I meet doing discussions and so on, and I got different answers there. I had an architect who said it's the gap. It's the gap between the furniture. It's the gap between the houses. It's basically the smaller the gap, the higher the quality is, and I found that interesting. I can't really put that into our world, in the software world, but I really enjoyed that idea. Some people say it's the material, it's this feeling, it feels nice. Others say it's the size of the hole. It's hard to describe, I think, and most people struggle with it. For me,
Mm.
it is definitely hard to measure in the software industry as well. There are a lot of measurements that you can do. You can measure the lines of code per method. You can measure the cyclomatic complexity and get these numbers, and they are all definitely interesting. But it is very important not to focus too much on them. It's more like, hey, that's the current state, that's the current numbers that we're looking at. We try to get those down, or we try to increase those over time, but not try to avoid something like, hey, we want to have 80% of code coverage, or try to avoid to say, hey, all methods need to be smaller than 10 lines of code. It's more the trend that we're looking at, and more the heat map, like where is the biggest smell in our code base, and start to refactor there and try to improve the quality there. But these numbers help you to get a feeling on your code quality. And another measurement that I really enjoyed is the velocity. So how many new features can we or release every week? And that's an interesting measure for me as well, because that really gives me a feeling on the quality that the team delivers. If that velocity is pretty stable over time, that means the developers care about quality. If the velocity or the output of my team is not stable over time, that basically means if it goes down, it means, hey, they're hacking something together, and every week it gets worse and worse, the code base.
Yeah, that's an interesting take on velocity that I haven't heard before, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Because we want to be building our features that don't make it harder. We want to be adding code to our code base that doesn't make it harder to add new features.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. So what do you think is a professional developer in your eyes?
A professional developer. It's interesting. I definitely say it's not about certifications. It's not about university degrees. It's not about having Scrum Master in the title. It's not about having a fancy title at all. It's more about you care about your craft. You care about others. You commit to quality. You're keen on improving others, you respect people, it's honesty, you publish your work, you help others, you get feedback, you focus on correctness, you try to make sure your code is evolvable over time, with the other hand that you're actually releasing stuff frequently. And yeah, these are a couple of values that a professional developer brings to the table. But what I really focus on myself at the moment is this idea of retrospectives or reflections. So I try to reflect every day a little bit, so maybe 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the day, and I think to myself, hey, which part of the day was the best part? Or what kind of job did I really enjoy today? Or what could I improve in my work? Or what was bad? What was good? What could I improve? So this personal retrospective or reflection, I think that's a very important way of being more professional, improve over time.
Absolutely.
It's the same idea as you do in Scrum with the team retrospective at the end of a sprint, but you do it as on a personal level. And yeah, that's a great way to improve yourself.
Absolutely. So where do you see your future with clean code?
I think I can improve a lot, which means I can learn new languages, new tools, new frameworks, so lots of things happening there. Yeah, I think the future is continuous improvement, and we'll see where I'm getting at.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing all of your clean code wisdom with us. It's been great to have you on.
Thank you.
And we'll look forward to catching up with you again soon.
All right. Thank you very much, Adam. See you soon. Bye.